Hello everybody. So today is the second part. I will continue with reading my story and how things came along. We're actually still very early in this before it actually really started, but it was still part of the process, so I continued the way I wrote it. On Thanksgiving, I learned something new. We had decided that we would have Thanksgiving dinner at his grandmother's place. That afternoon, when I came to his house, his oldest daughter and son were in an argument, and his youngest daughter, still a teenager, was a mediator between the two. And as I said to my boyfriend later that day, that I have never seen such wisdom in a young lady. I really noticed something different that day for the first time in my life, listening to her. We all have an unbelievable inner wisdom, but most of us are totally unaware, and we can only learn as we become aware and listen more. 2 days after the dinner at his grandmother's house, I kept thinking over and over I should go and visit her. It was strange, since in the 7 months that I knew him, I had seen her only a few times for short visits with him, and nothing really warranted my thought. But I did go over 3 days later. The door was locked, but I knew where the key was, so I let myself in just to find her still in bed, and it was late morning. She had been unable to get out of bed at all that morning. I spent the next few mornings going over to her place and help her up, tried to get more home care, but it was impossible, and finally brought her to the hospital where she was admitted. That evening, I went over to the shop later to give him an update about his grandmother, and I could just tell that something was wrong again. It took me several days of him not speaking to me again to realize what was wrong here. I grew up in a family where you just help people. No reason or motives needed. If someone needs help, you help. Mom was always very altruistic. The doors at home were always open. Would I do all this work all my life? I have always given and helped, as you will find out later on. It's just me. Yes, today. I know that life gets very unbalanced if you don't accept as much as you give. But that is a whole different chapter. After a week at the hospital, where I went and visited her daily, a bed became available at the nursing home, and after much convincing from my part that it was impossible for her to go home at this stage, she agreed, sadly, to go. Randy and I had not spoken in over a week again, but I was busy, and it was okay. I had gotten used to this on and off relationship. One day, after I had picked up some clothes at his grandmother's place for her, I realized that he had followed me because he stopped me at the street in his car and asked me how Grandma was doing. I was sure that the day before I had seen him in the parking lot at the hospital. So we started talking again for, well, maybe a week, and then we were off again. It was okay. Between work, visiting two elderly, his grandmother and another older gentleman that I went to see regularly, and the girls at home, it was busy. Then, one Sunday morning in November, he texted me, "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I texted back, "You know where I live." And I left it at that. He came about an hour later, apologizing that it took so long. He thought I had said I knew where he lived. Ah, well, that too. But I sure was not going up there. So we went for a short drive down to the river in town, and would you believe it? He proposed to me. I was speechless, to say the least. We hadn't talked in, a month? The reason was me helping his grandmother, and nobody could figure out my motives. So I didn't say yes or no. We just talked. He knew. Several days later, funny enough, we are actually still talking to each other. He said to me that I didn't even give him an answer. So I drew hearts, tons of them, out of construction paper, wrote yes on them, and then while he was at work, decorated his living room walls with it. I guess there was my answer. Christmas came, and with it, the ring that he didn't have time to get before. We had a good time over the holidays, but I noticed a shift right after New Year's. That was the first time I actually became aware of our energies. I was spending a morning at his house, and no matter what, we could not be close to each other. It was like there was a circle around us with so much negative energy that it just prevented us to get close. And it was 2 days later when that morning happened with the breakup. Back together in February, we decided to go away for Valentine's Day weekend. And I will never forget how we drove up Carling Avenue on our way home, and I realized that no matter what I thought and didn't actually say, he had a comment to it. This went on for about 5 minutes till I said out loud, "I give up." I had actually just started to read Sonia Choquette's Trust Your Vibes book, where she had said that our thoughts connect all the time and that we should be careful or mindful of our thoughts. And here it was, living proof of telepathy, the connection of minds. That was one of the many things that followed that showed me that there is a whole other world out there. Shortly after, I was driving to pick up my youngest daughter from skiing and listening to one of my favorite CDs in the car when I noticed that the CD had skipped over a song that I didn't like as much. This continued the whole way. I know the CD by heart, and always before I can hear the song, I start humming the tune. So of course, with them skipping, it was very noticeable to me. I remember asking everybody if they ever noticed that CDs just skip over songs. I learned actually just last year from an interview I heard with Hans King that the spirits are very good with technical things, and they can do a lot of mischief as well if they want to, just to prove their point to all the things that I just couldn't comprehend. And probably most people still cannot. I was leaving Almont to pick up my daughter from work when I glanced at the clock, and it was 3:08. Strangely enough, I never forgot the exact time that day. After the approximate 10 minutes drive, I was almost there, looked at the clock again, and here it was still 3:08. And I kept looking at it for a minute thinking, there's no way. I know I left at 3:08. And then focusing back on the road, the next time I looked, the time had gone back to normal. These were the small wonders I experienced at the beginning of my awareness to the magical world of spirits and angels. And with that, this was also the beginning of the darkest time of my life, between working full-time in home care, looking after 2 little boys, and working for 3 paramedical companies, and reading lots of books about this new world I had discovered. Things had started to get too much all of a sudden. My mind was in a constant flurry. I'll leave it at that for today. So this was the beginning of my journey, and yeah, it was a lot of fun the first couple of months, but then everything else just got really crazy, and you will hear about that in the next segment of this. Have a good one.